Hello guys, welcome back. So I'm actually going to start another series, and this is where a lot of my collecting and my love for preparation and backpacks and all this stuff started, and it's actually pocket knives or folding knives. I wouldn't say some of these are pocketable, but I'm gonna have to split this up into a couple of different videos because I have about 100 folding knives and probably 75 to 100 fixed blade knives as well. So I'm going to start with folding knives, but I'm going to have to break them up into kind of, I guess, I guess categories, but they're just made up categories. they're no category in particular, but these are the ones that really started my love for folding knives. And the reason I like this category, and this category I'm starting with, is because it sets a precedence of, like in many of my other videos, I really like to buy things for life. I like the idea of having something that fits all the need. I know that in most cases it's not realistic, but the idea and the intent is there when buying these. I like the traditional things that just tend to last. Military surplus is a great example. May not always be shiny, fancy, and high tech, but it will be there in 35, 40, 50 plus years, and it will still work. So I'm going to start off with my kind of traditional knives from around the world. Some of these you may know, some of them may be new to you guys, but so in no particular order. And some of these are not necessarily traditional knives in the sense of they're old or they're classic designs necessarily. Some of them are newer designs. They are newer knives and newer materials, but they are designed after some of these classic designs, or they take cues from older style. And I'll talk through some of those as we go through. I won't know all the names. I won't know all the details around them. But I'll kind of give you some of the thoughts and thinking behind what each of these may be used for, what they're good for, and why I just purchased them. So starting off in no particular order, I think everybody's going to recognize probably one of the first knives in most people's collection. I have it in this really nice leather sheath. This is a authentic buck leather sheath. Very, very nice. Definitely got some use on it, but it's very rigid. I mean, this is a pretty thick slab of leather. It's rigid and it's nice. Definitely shaped well. So this is one of my very first pocket knives. Definitely got some use and wear. It's an older one, but I kept in very good shape with the edge, with the steel. You can definitely see some patinaing there from moisture. Um, it's brass, very heavy, but original scales, original wood scales. I have tightened one of these before just with a ball peen hammer. The scale started getting a little loose and I just peened it back and it's like it was never loose. I have also somewhat been able to tighten the pivot. So I had a little bit of rot in here, a little bit. It's not there now, but there was, and I basically just put this on an anvil and hit it with, on this side actually, you can see some of the scratches, hit it to tighten it back up, and it worked. It was a bit of a test, it was a bit of a gamble, but the quality here has been awesome. 420 on these guys, USA made. Um, Definitely nice having a very classic style pocket knife. I mean, this feels like a tank in your hand. They do have newer variances of this I definitely want to try out. The auto as well as the S30V versions and all kinds of modernized versions of this while keeping the same old school aesthetic. But I think I've had this one for 15 years and it's a very same one and it is awesome. Do not drop this into my pocket. That's rather heavy, but this leather sheath makes it very nice and easy to carry. And that is a United States classic. So I've got a couple of other more United States friendly um, knives here. So let me. So I think there are two. So I'm going to start with this one. So this is the Buck Tradesman, I think. I actually don't remember the exact Stockman. It's a Buck Stockman. Nickel plated bolsters, G10. I think it's G10 or some plastic. This isn't necessarily a high-end knife. but it's definitely a very classic non-locking 3-blade Stockman. The pattern's pretty popular. A lot of guys used to rely on just these as a pocket knife before modern locking and all those came into play. I've tried to carry something like just this, but I quickly realized that the stuff that I like to do needs a little bit more locking power. I think if these are locked, it might be a little bit easier. Great in terms of nostalgia and kind of grandpa cool factor. I used this quite a bit when I was doing a little bit of electrical. This blade shape for sheathing and stuff on wiring is awesome. This is the one I typically did not use. I left this one as sharp as possible. The shape and everything on here, it just made me think of like a surgical blade. So for some reason, I just had this mindset of, you know, it looks like a surgical blade. I'm gonna try and keep that one scalpel sharp. This was definitely the most used. Got the clip point utility blade, also 420 HC on all these blades. But this, I think, is like the sibling of the Buck 110 in terms of just classic designs. A couple of things I actually do not like about this is there's quite a bit of wiggle in all of these blades. Obviously, they don't lock, so you expect a little bit of wiggle, but I would say even too much for comfort on many of these. I mean, it's just too much. But locking blades really have become a safety factor. I've cut my hand on a few of these multiple times because of a non-locking blade. The other thing is that sharpened edge here is exposed. It is not fully in there, and I've never cut myself on it, but I have had fabric get caught on it, and it kind of slice it up a little bit. Very rare. I think it's a very specific situation in which that happens, but it does happen and has happened. You got your knife and hammer, classic Buck logo thing there. I mean, it's been carried, it's been used, and it's held up well, aside from those small issues. If they could do it a little bit higher end, where it's a little bit more better fit and finish, I think this would be a fantastic example of a classic Stockman. This next one is a case knife, and so this is the Case Mini Sodbuster, or Sodbuster Junior. So this is a classic knife in like a workforce kind of classic knife. I can't remember the exact steel on this, but this one's a stainless, but they do typically use a carbon as well. I don't know the exact steel, but this one also is a slip joint, but has a much better lockup. I don't want to say lockup, but has a much better, much stronger back lock or back spring. You can kind of hear that when I close it. I mean, it's pretty significant. It takes a little bit of power to kind of overcome that spring. I've scratched my kind of old childhood logo in there. I've had this one for a while as well. This is definitely a very classic style, not expensive, but you've got real brass liners. So it actually works rather well. Got that big oversized pinned pivot. I'm not typically a fan of pinned knives or riveted knives, but in classic styles like this, it definitely makes more sense. I've never had the scales or anything on this come up. I've dropped this knife before too. You might be able to see that in the tip. And I've kind of tossed it around, thrown it around, dropped it, never had anything loosen up on me. So whatever magic they're using to keep these pinned together has worked. It's very lightweight, but this is very, very capable for a non-locking knife. I think this style of knife was kind of a perfect match, or kind of a perfect culmination of both old school, new school. But it's an old school design. Again, USA made. Love this. Now, after having this one and really enjoying it, I decided to pick up the big brother of this, which is the full-size Sodbuster. This one is my jam. So this one's in the CV steel, also USA made. Same basic construction, but it's much bigger. It reminds me of like this meets Buck 110. That full flat grind on that until a secondary bevel. I mean, that's big in the hand. If you needed to choke up, you could. I've got medium, large size hands. So you can see, I mean, that's a pretty big grip. Again, non-locking. It doesn't feel as strong because the blade's quite a bit longer, so you have a lot more leverage. That is this. And definitely the grind is quite a bit different. You've got more of a rough ground on this, and this is a much more polished grind. But in terms of performance and cutting power and all that, and this is really a gem. They're not expensive, guys. These are not expensive. And if taken care of and used properly, I don't think this will do, I think this will do everything that a high-end modern Benchmade would do. Blade shape is nice, hand is nice. This is just gives you the old grandpa knew what he was doing type fizz. And I really appreciate that in these type of classic knives. So these are more of a pair, but highly recommend either one of these, honestly. So moving on, this one is a bit of a classic design, but definitely newer. So it's on the line of what we were just looking at. So this is actually a Benchmade Hunter. This is all modern material. So this is ironwood, which is, I think, a poly impregnated wood, or not poly, some type of plastic impregnated wood. So it's real wood, but it's impregnated with something to stabilize it. I can't remember exactly what material it is, but S30V, saber ground. This is a flat saber ground. Very, very sharp, very comfortable. This one includes a pocket clip. So again, this is very reminiscent of a classic hunter knife, like the Buck. This one has phosphor bronze bushings in there, which make it just glide like an ice skate. I mean, this is, I could drop that by just releasing the back lock. This feels very high end. I mean, it just feels high end. This one has adjustable everything, so it has, again, the classic styling with some of the more modern build. There you see your S30V blade. Benchmade's S30V is a little chippy for me, so I've tended to be a little bit lighter handed, but the stock is quite thick. It's got jimping both in the back and the front for skinning. I thought this was going to be my one and done, guys. I really did. When I found this, we were on the road. My wife and I were traveling, and we were traveling through towards Colorado. I don't remember what state we were in when I found this. We stopped at some small local knife shop, and I saw this, had never seen it before, and thought, you know what, that's it. That is the knife for me. I just couldn't bring myself to carry this. Something about it did not click for me. It wasn't the pocket clip. I don't mind the pocket clip. Just something about it. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's a beautiful knife. Very, very pretty. Very useful. You get the same sense you do, or at least a similar sense you do when carrying the 110. I don't know. Maybe I don't expect to carry it with a pocket clip. Maybe I need to get a leather sheath and those kind of make some connections that I feel like should be there. But again, heavy knife as well, which doesn't typically give me any concern. You definitely got some skeletonization in there to try and lighten this thing up, but by no means is this a light knife. Definitely full metal liners though, so you don't have to worry about it. It's got no wiggle at all, up and down. Lock is great. So yeah, it's good. Another nice USA made. So there is another, I guess I would call it a traditional styled knife, but not necessarily a traditional made knife. So this is actually another YouTuber. Many of you guys might know him, Cutlery Lover. He was one of the first YouTubers I started watching when I started collecting knives. I just liked his approach. He was super calm, super cool dude. Never met him, but I really liked his content. I liked his personality online. So when he came out with this knife with Bastion gear, I was like, that's so interesting and unique. I actually have a category for interesting and unique knives. This may actually play, or may come into play again in that video. But this is all on ball bearing right here. So you've got your kind of modern style knife. I can't remember what steel is on that, but it's a modern steel. Let's see if I can. Okay, S35VN. Probably my favorite blade steel, even above like 3V or S30 or S45VN. I just think it makes a really nice combination of hardness and toughness. But you also have a traditional style non-locking blade too. So you get the classic non-locking blade, but then if you really wanted to, you get a nice ball bearing flipper in a modern high-end steel with a lock, but it looks like a traditional pocket knife. Um, I don't like this knife. I'll be honest. I could never carry this as a one and done. I've never carried this knife. It was more of a, wow, I want to support this guy. It's a really interesting idea. I think there's a lot that could be, that was right, but a lot that's wrong. Um, so you can't really get this nail nick back here to try and get this. I mean, it's real hard. This doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, this is comfortable, right? You got your little flipper that comes down, but unlocking it, you can't unlock it with your thumb. You have to use your nail because you're just not getting your thumb in there. But the other issue is if you can get this blade out with that nail nick, that sticks out. So you're gonna have to like use it like this or put your thumb in front of it, which is probably the best bet. But if you need to do anything where you put your thumb on top, you're gonna jab your thumb into that. So no, this design is not something that I would say is an award-winning design. But I really like Cutlery Lover. I really like the idea. It's pretty innovative, really cool design. It had a lot of misses for me. All G10 stainless, high-end material, classic design. So cool, but not in the traditional sense of cool in terms of just being useful. But it's neat either way. So I do have some more traditional knives from, I guess, around the world, you could say. The next few I'm going to do as a collection here because I think they're all quite related. You guys probably know these. These are Opinels. You'll notice that I have customized a few of these. So going from the smallest, so this is actually the number 6. So this is the Opinel number 6 with the neck lock, twist lock there. Very, very lightweight. These are great for food prep type knives. If you've got like a portable kitchen for camping, whatever, toss this in there. If you eat cheese, great for cutting cheese. Very thin, very slicey, very lightweight. Not super durable, especially in these smaller ones, but surprisingly durable. You could definitely put quite a bit of use on these before you notice any issues. The stock is pretty thin, but again, for like standard pocket knife use, it's great. This is the only one I've kept stock. I do have 2 others, but they are elsewhere. One of them I broke the collar on accident. I don't know what I did. May have been doing something stupid, not surprising. And the other one I have lost somewhere in my garage. But they were all number 10s or number 8s. So I do have a number 8 here, but it's definitely not one that I lost. So this is actually I think it's the gardening version, also in the stainless. I customized this one. So this is not just for looks. This was for adding grip. It didn't work. This wood is so slick and this tail is so small. I don't know if I customized that to be small. I can't remember these days, but added finger grooves. Those work more than anything else, but even then, it's just a pretty small footprint to try and grab. Definitely a failed attempt at customization. But still a decent blade, nonetheless. Might toss this alongside something there so you have something to cut vegetables and something to cut smaller items. This is probably my favorite. Again, customize this one. This is the number 10. So it's the same style as this, but just in a larger size. I added a bit of a pinky groove there to give myself some extra grip. Reshaped the tail end here to make it a little bit smaller. Gave myself a little bit of a butt cap. I'm actually going to put a metal plate back here to give myself a little bit of a hammering surface. But I thinned it out quite a bit flattened it out as well, flattened the sides a little bit. But very, very comfortable, very big. You could definitely do a lot of everyday carry stuff. There's no pocket clips on these, so these are more of a drop it in your pocket or your backpack. Forget it. But these are so lightweight, man. They do make sheaths for these too, so you could belt carry them. But very, very cool traditional. These are French traditional. Everything before now has been more of like the American style traditional knives, what you might come across, but this is more of a French traditional pocket knife, which I like. I do have French heritage, so I was pretty interested in a French knife company. But if you Google French knife, you'll definitely come across Opinel, and they have a whole collection, a whole line: fishing, hunting. They have folding saws, which a lot of people swear by in bushcraft. Very, very cool traditional. I do have some. I have another one, which is I believe it's a German. Yeah, it's a German-made knife. So this is the K55K cat knife, due to the cat on there. This is a very slim lockback knife, very, very reminiscent pen blade of like a Swiss Army knife, but it's all locking. It's only a single blade. If you need something to disappear, this is like the SOG Slim Jim, but this is better in my opinion. The Slim Jim is just, I don't know. I don't like the Slim Jim. I've had one, I've held one, used one, and this does everything better. It's super slim, good lockup, all metal construction, so it feels very heavy duty. It doesn't have the flex the Slim Jim did. It's got a little lanyard loop thing. You're just going to drop this in your pocket or your backpack, similar to the Opinels, made in Germany. There you go. Solingen. You can find these on Amazon. So, and they've got a couple of different versions. I actually think now that they're becoming popular again, you can buy new colors and materials and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty cool one. This is the original kind of style. You can get them in brass and copper and all kinds of like titanium handles now, I believe. But I, again, like the classics, so I went with the classic. I have used and carried this. This is not a stainless. It does patina. It will rust. But you want to talk about like, I mean, just classic European French or European bread knife or something. You take this picnicking, drop it in your pocket. This thing is so thin, so slicey, and it stays sharp rather well. I don't know the steel on this. It's a mystery steel, but this is really, really cool. I have something special for this knife, just the way it holds, the way it carries. It feels so solid for as slim as it is. Mercator, I don't know. I don't know. I barely know English, but very cool. Another traditional knife that I really dig. I have some Asian inspired knives. So the first one, some of you guys might be familiar with. It's a very traditional style Japanese kind of folding samurai knife, I guess. Very cool. I actually keep it in the plastic case that it came with, because it is very fingerprinty prone. I think this is the blue steel knife, or blue steel, something super blue steel, something along those lines. I remembered it just because the Zoolander's special look, but laminated blue steel, something along those lines, but very, very sharp. There's a single bevel on this. It looks like there's two bevels, but that's actually lamination. So that end is just a different layer of lamination. So it's got a very sharp core and then it's laminated with a softer steel. The only thing that holds this blade open is if you put your thumb here when you use it. But once you've got your finger there, you feel pretty good. Just don't let go, because then it will just close on your fingers. This is one of the knives I cut myself on. I don't know how, don't know why, but I decided to put my thumb higher up and it got stuck into whatever I was cutting. And when I pulled back, it slammed forward and cut my knuckle. Again, very, very cool traditional knife. The only other thing to be careful of with this guy is there is no stop in this blade. That blade is going to slam in the back of this brass when you close it. So make sure you close it softly, otherwise you will damage your blade. But again, very, very cool traditional. Most of these I don't use, guys. These are more of like the ideal classic, because I just enjoyed the classic. I love that, that grandpa style knife, what you'd imagine some guy in classic military or farmhand just using for 10, 12 years, not even realizing what they had. But this is another one, very inexpensive. You can find it on Amazon. That's where I purchased it. It's more of like a box cutting knife, but it's so thin. I mean, it's as thin as a razor blade. The whole thing is basically just a piece of brass that's folded over to hold this steel, and it's got this little metal cover. It does not lock on, so you just basically just friction holding it. But man, I thought this was so neat. Good for box opening, maybe wood carving. I think that was what the original description said on this, was wood carving or wood crafting. I have used it to cut wood. It's still very, very sharp, but it was only a couple bucks. I don't expect this to last super long. I think this is more of considered a disposable. I don't know how often how long you'd be able to sharpen that before it becomes useless. But it's got an interesting tip on there, and I don't know if that's a mistake or if that's on purpose, but that tip doesn't come to a finite point from this end. It kind of dips down a little bit, but very, very sharp. Chisel ground, but it's so thin it doesn't matter. So that's a cool one. I think that one's more considered a working knife as well. So this one is the Svord. It's a New Zealand classic pocket knife, very similar in the sense that the only thing that holds this open is your hand grabbing it. This one I have used and abused. I actually carried this for a long time. This used to come out to a point. I cut that off. It's just plastic with big old brass pivots. So it's just two pieces of plastic with this blade, which is one piece screwed in there with flat head. You can adjust the tension by adjusting this and this. The only thing that holds this blade in is the tension you put on these. There's no locking mechanism. There's no catch. There's no latch. This is 5 pieces. 2 bolts, handle, blade. That's it. But man, when you got your hand wrapped around this, you can do some work. In fact, I actually used to have a different lanyard thing on here that I would kind of wrap before I put my hand on to give me some extra. But I've used this. Unfortunately, it was dropped on the tip of the knife and I had to reprofile the edge a little bit. I was pretty bummed by that, but I was able to repair it for the most part. Man, this is a great knife. So inexpensive, guys. Again, so inexpensive for these classic knives, but you get a lot of knife. I used to just drop this in my pocket, keep this lanyard outside of my pocket. When I needed it, just pull it out of the pocket. This would be up, so I'd actually have it like this in my pocket. So this is the back of my pocket, and then you just pull this up. So nice. I carried this more than the Buck 110. This was my everyday carry for a long time. Loved it. I love the unfinished look where it was hardened and crafted. So cool, very cool, very usable, and doesn't need a lock. This one never gave me an issue. So the next one is a traditional style, but it's a modern make. Some of you guys may know the kudu. I think this is an African blade or African style blade. Traditionally, this is made in an ironwood or some other type of wood with the engraved metal in there, and then it's got this pull lock on it, or this ratchet lock. It's ratcheting. So this doesn't unlock unless you pull back on this and then use your finger to push it forwards, and then it's unlocked. And you've got these grooves notched into it, which are like little mini stops until it locks out. Very lightweight. I mean, this blade is so long. If you're looking for something that's super lightweight, super long for food cut and stuff like food processing, this thing is great for vegetables. The only issue is this thing, rattly as hell. So typically I would kind of hold it with my finger in one direction or the other, and it gets a little messy. But again, very simple construction, just two polymer pieces. Or actually, this is one single polymer piece molded together with a blade. Very simple, but pretty reliable. I don't really see how this lock can fail unless you overextend when pulling back. You just need to pull it back enough to pop that blade. Don't wrench back. But I think this was like 12 bucks. They're so inexpensive, made by Cold Steel, but it is an African design. The last one is very similar to, it's kind of a mix between the Svord and the Opinels, but I actually got this one in Bulgaria when we were traveling. So this one is similar, that it has a little tang, but the cool thing about this one is the stop is actually just this metal ring. So without this metal ring, that blade would just basically rotate indefinitely until it popped out. It's just pinned with brass, got the ring back there, and then it opens up, hits that ring, and stops. I just thought it was a neat design. Super simple. Got some inlays going on, some metal inlays. You know, not super high fancy. It's not even really all that well done, but it's pretty neat. It's just a cool little story. Certainly wouldn't want to carry this one. It does not seat all the way. That tip does grab, and that's all the way down. So it's just not, and there's no stop, so it slams into the wood and all that. Same issues you have with some of these other traditionals. The fit and finish on it's not good, but it was a cool memory, and it's a very traditional style knife. So that's it. Yeah, that's the traditional knives that started it all. I do have a lot of other knives that we'll be covering. High-end, inexpensive, small, little small pocket carry, and then the interesting knives that I think are a little bit more unique. So if you really like knives like I do, definitely stick around. There's a lot to come. It's going to take several videos to get through my collection of both fixed blades and folders. So I hope to see you guys again. And if you have any questions on any of the knives I am showing, I will try and link them with Amazon affiliates best I can. Amazon affiliates are not a necessity, but they do help me out a little bit. Very small kickback on those. But I bought all of this with my own money. I am not big enough to be sponsored by anything yet. This is sponsored by my hard work and my salary. So any questions, or you just want to talk about one of the knives, or you have experience with one of the knives, or even if you had a failure, if you have a story. I love knife stories. Like, oh, I saved myself by using my Buck 110 and cutting a backpack away when I fell off a hill and got caught in a tree. Any of those cool stories that actually happened, please tell me. I love them. It gives me a new appreciation for these classic knives. Hopefully everything turned out okay. I don't want horror stories, but if you've got some cool story about how your knife kind of saved your butt, I'd love to know that. So hope you guys come back, and see you in the next one.